I think we're going to get to the audio that is going to stick in the.
He'll
in
regret
Minifane's
saying
yeah,
this. I think if he doesn't already, I've seen.
Yeah, I think that this
shit
is,
on Twitter.
I think this is going to be pretty bad for him.
Could management do, even if we wanted to,
You never-
prevent the Minifans and Kirk Minihane?
You never
Let me tell
know.
you something, Kirk Minihane. He's fucking crazy.
Right,
I like
but
him.
you never know what's going on with somebody mentally. So I saw Kate Sweets. I was like,
But,
oh,
all right, fine.
Well, yeah.
But
Fine.
apparently,
what
some
would-
people aren't able to take mental time out.
But
Well,
So
okay,
there we go.
Brandon, if you don't know what's going on with someone mentally, maybe shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, why not give both sides that credence? And also, this was not a thing, whatever was going on with Kate, it was not triggered by the show. The show never said go attack Kate. And the thing going on with Kirk was not triggered by the show or Twitter or any of that stuff. So shut the fuck up. Obviously, Brandon doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, maybe he's older than me. I don't know if he's like an old school Southern type of guy that doesn't get what mental health is. Maybe he just thinks the silly little ladies deal with mental health problems. But maybe you should just shut the fuck up about it, because obviously he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
And the other thing is he's wrong, because I think anybody at the company could take mental health leave. Like Barstool
I would assume, right?
Barstool is a modern enough company where you could take a few weeks off for mental health. You don't have to have like a cancer diagnosis to take a little bit of time off. I mean, the company handbook says we have unlimited time off. So I think like within reason, if you were really suffering with something, I think like based on my experience with Erica and through Kirk's situation, I think Brandon Walker, if he wanted to, could take some time off for his mental health. Kate could take some time off for her mental health.
All right. So, yeah. This is the rundown. We are doing the re-listen of the Robinson Rules episode. Just like last time, we are going to cover some of the current events in the after show, and we do want to cover right off the top the 49-minute episode that was the Baby Brandon episode of the Steve and Mike show. So we've got Ziggy and we've got VD here. Nobody I would want to start off with more than Ziggy, because my friend, this was everything that you wanted. This was everything that you asked for. This was everything that you and Turtle Boy wanted. This was the Steve and Mike show.
Okay, so for the
Well,
I think this,
hold please.
I'll mute your mic.
Yeah, mute him. This is the Steve and Mike show. This is weighing in on the important topics. It sounded like a Proud Boys rally at one point. We were going Kamala Harris all day long, and all the reasons why she's going to be terrible for the country, and even Mikey politics weighed in there. It was everything you wanted, I'm assuming. So I'm going to kick it off to you, Ziggy. This is what you wanted. This is what Turtle Boy wanted. This was your show. You must have loved this.
yeah. So for the second, maybe the third week in a row, I'll start by saying, don't put words in my mouth. Because you're not good at it. You're not smart enough.
Smart
to
enough.
So.
Thank you. I was going to finish your line for you. Okay.
So yeah, Red, you said that this was a 49-minute episode. For me, this was a 36-minute episode because I skipped right past that 10 minutes of Steve kind of blowing his load with the politics talk, and I did skip the 3-minute WAP bit at the end because it was not very funny to me. No, but it was nice to have an episode. It's always nice to have something come across the feed. No one was expecting Kirk to be there, so expectations were low.
Sure.
I was thankful. I am thankful, rather, that Mike and Steve are not doing a daily show, because that would mean we have to take our time to prep for the rundown based off Mike and Steve Robinson episode.
True.
So thankful for that. The biggest takeaway, obviously, that almost seemed to be glossed over on the Twitter recap or reaction to the episode was Steve saying that he talked to Kirk a couple times. Kirk's feeling a little better. Steve said that Steve is more encouraged after talking to Kirk, so that's always good.
Absolutely.
We want Kirk back, but more importantly, we want Kirk to take his time, don't rush back. So it was nice to get that little update. But like you said, Steve kind of blew past the update and went right to the politics talk, which not for me. I get it. It's for some people. It's for the Turtle Boys of the world, but not for me.
I will say that apparently, I didn't skip through. I'm a real fan. Apparently, you're not.
I didn't either. Two times speed. That's my.
Okay.
That's my move.
I've listened to this episode 3 times. That's how much of a dysfunctional learner I am, and then also I hate listened the shit out of this. And the entire time I was just thinking of Ziggy and how much you owe us all an apology. So I really don't want to move off this. I really want to rub your nose in this as much as possible.
I mean, I can.
Are you going to officially apologize to everyone for what happened on Wednesday?
No, I apologize for nothing because I never
Okay.
said that I wanted the Steve and Mike show. I think I said that I wanted them to try different things. The
Mm.
Steve and Mike show isn't really a different thing. But if I'm trying to be positive, which that's kind of my goal for the night, because it's easy for me to be negative about Mike and Steve. So I will be positive. They can always work on their chemistry. This is a good opportunity to work on their chemistry. So there you go.
Well, nobody backtracks like Ziggy. VD. Well, I mean, you're a Steve guy, so was this a good thing for you? Was this nice?
This was a little bit of a tough one. I mean, I'm a Steve guy. I'm a Steve is a great producer guy. I'm not a Steve is a great frontman to a podcast guy. So, similar to Ziggy, I smashed right through that politics, that political talk. Just not for me. He does it very well. If he wanted to do a political podcast, he'd do it very well. There's no denying that. I remember he said, Erica had mentioned him doing something with the Hard Factor guys, and I've never really watched their show or anything, but I really hope for their sake they don't have to do something with SE because politics just brings out the smugness and the douchiness in Steve Robinson so quickly. And I can see, I watched him go on Channel Zero show and turn his nose up to the conspiracy theories, and anyone with a lesser political knowledge than him, he's kind of, when he steps in the political arena, he doesn't take prisoners. So that's what I love about SC. But it's also, I hope for the Hard Factory guys, they don't have to deal with him.
He was being pretty condescending towards them. I've never watched them either, but you could tell he was looking down them. I think he said their show was similar to The Hammer, which The Hammer is a parody on bad radio.
Documentary. Yeah.
And then Steve gave them the advice of the 100-mile rule. Don't bring up a subject if it's further than 100 miles away from your location.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard Howie Carr and Jerry Callahan say that over and over again.
Yes.
And again, Steve Robinson is 31 years old. He is the oldest person that's ever walked this earth. The thing that bothers me is his political talk. I've already heard the Tucker Carlson points. I've heard the Howie Carr points. Then I hear Jerry Callahan regurgitate those points to Turtle Boy, and then I got to hear Steve Robinson do it. It drives me nuts. I don't need that over and over again. I mean, he is the wedding singer to the backup band, cover band, to the Howie Carr. It goes Howie Carr and then Jerry and then Steve. And it's not something I ever want again, Ziggy. I need you to know that.
Yeah. And it was when he was talking about that 100-mile rule that I really missed Kirk in this episode because he would have been all over that, just dumping on Steve.
He would have jumped all over it.
Or Steve would have been too afraid to even mention it because he would have been dumped on.
Yeah, there's no way. I do. It is underrated to have Steve, kind of comfortable Steve, smug Steve, just sitting there relaxing, dog in the studio. And then Mike's also a little bit more relaxed. Yet they don't have any chemistry, which is odd that they've been working together this long. So they'll keep working on that. But there was a little Easter egg in there. Hopefully, I think we have some breaking news.
We do.
Big J journalist.
We do. But before we get to that, on the subject of the Hard Factor. So Steve said that he was having a conversation with Erica about it. And I'm kind of wondering if Erica talked to Steve about being more supportive of the company publicly, because I've noticed he's been retweeting a lot more pro Barstool stuff. Last week, I think he retweeted the K Marco's tweet about the gambling app, but that was clearly just to sick the Minifans on K Marco. But since talking, I don't know when the conversation was, but in the last week, he's retweeted the Deion Sanders hire. He's retweeted a couple times KFC's Answer the Internet app. So I'm just reading between the lines here that possibly there was a little talking to. I know you'd like to hear that read, so that was for you.
I don't want to say I'm right again. I don't want to say that because I hesitate to say how right I am. I'm a humble person.
Very true.
But I will say that I did mention there was a lot of subscription service talk beforehand and the KirkMinihaneShow.com. And now there's a lot of RSS feed stuff going on and a lot of retweets. And nobody was more excited about the Deion Sanders hire than Steve Robinson. And he has no idea who Deion Sanders is.
No.
So it felt like, to me, I enjoyed Steve singing for his supper a little bit. I like this. This is good. Steve's a little worried about what's going on right now. I like it.
Luckily, yes. I'm here to tell you that you're wrong.
Oh, what?
Yeah. I'm here to tell you you're wrong. Obviously, Barstool's not the kind of place where Erica would call Steve and say, you need to be a little more supportive of the company. Obviously, this is just indicative of like Kirk's going through a hard time. Barstool is handling the situation perfectly. They're paying everyone. They're supportive. And I think Big Steve is just being grateful for it. He's a nice guy. He says thank you.
Yeah.
He sends thank you texts after they go to Milton's. Blind Mike doesn't.
That's true.
Big Steve's just a good guy, and I think relations between Barstool and the Miniverse are at an all-time high for me. Even like this last Brandon Walker little beef, like it was fun for a day or two, but doesn't seem like there's any serious grudge being held. Things just seem to be integrated well between the Miniverse and the Barstool world right now.
Wow. Okay, look at you. It seems like Steve sent you a memo as well. I don't know. This is good.
Well,
I might have had some talking points sent to me from Steve, but I won't confirm or deny.
Yeah,
Wow.
without VD, I'm pretty sure the show would never get up on the YouTube. So we need that yin to our yang. Right?
Yeah, keep working that relationship.
Gotta pander a little bit,
Yeah, you do. You got to play the game. Speaking of pandering and playing the game, nobody does it better than Ziggy. Before we go on to a little bit more Brandon Walker talk, did you want to release this breaking news that you have?
Yes. So
please, the floor is yours.
In the episode on Wednesday, Steve mentioned that there was an Easter egg in the Sacco video that Kate submitted. So if those who didn't see it, which I'll get to in a second, Kate did a video at Saturday Sacco show, basically calling the Minifans trash, but in a joking manner. It was lighthearted, haha.
It was good.
And at the end of it, she said, "Oh, and if you can read the subtitles below me, whatever, something like that." So the subtitles come up and they're in Chinese, and Steve on Wednesday mentioned there's an Easter egg in those subtitles, and he threw out the challenge to the Minifans, which of course in Steve fashion didn't include the Kate video in the Sacco recap that was on the email list. So I don't think anyone could have found it.
Ziggy, before you go on, do you hide an Easter egg in the middle of a lawn, or do you put it in a bush? You don't lay it out for everybody to find.
Either way, if Steve had any sense to him, he would know that I would have tracked it down as the big J journalist that I am.
Yeah, did Steve do it again, or did he do it again, man?
So I found some bootleg video of Kate's video from Sacco and pulled out the old Android and was able to translate the subtitles. So here's what I have. There's really 5 statements. The Android's translation may not be the best, but I think I managed to kind of pull out what's actually being said. So the first statement on the subtitle was Xi Jinping, who's the chancellor of China. Xi Jinping is a dictator.
Tread carefully here. Tread carefully.
Well, yes, I will. Xi Jinping is a dictator like a cartoon bear. That's the translation, literal word for word. But this is really Steve being scandalous because in China, if you refer to Jinping as Winnie the Pooh, it's pretty much punishable by death. So Steve basically throwing that out there, calling the chancellor or whatever, the dictator of China, Winnie the Pooh. The second one is the NBA is using Uyghur death camps. So Steve kind of getting that dig in there at Kate and at the NBA and at cancel culture.
He's owning libs, even with his subtitles.
Yeah.
He's owning libs. I love this. Yeah.
The third one was a little unclear. My phone thought that it said, "Shoot the big I is a liar." I believe that was supposed to be Big Steve is a liar. So a little self-deprecation from Steve there.
Is it not the big I, if I'm just speculating, could this be Steve putting in there that the Warden of the North, who likes to use the one eye, the all-seeing eye, is
trust me, I made sure I did the reverse translation for Warden of the North. It's not the same. I did my research here. It's definitely Big Steve is a liar, number 3. Number 4, the classic Blind Mike fucks his mother. And number 5, the translation was "Long Live Jesus Division." I am assuming that is "Long Live Podcast Jesus."
Okay.
Yes.
So Steve kind of throwing the classics out there, but again, I kind of miss Kirk because Kirk would have loved to dump on Steve for these Easter eggs. But
do you think there's any way that Kirk knew those subtitles would be in there, and that's what those subtitles would be? Do you think he had any idea?
I hope
0%. 0%.
Because there is No
I love
humor.
Kirk, but I would lose some respect if you knew that those were.
There is not a lot of humor in there at all.
Kirk used to not know that his podcast had an intro and an outro for quite a long time.
I still don't think he knows that it has an outro.
Yeah.
That's true.
So he definitely didn't know that.
Wow. That is breaking news. I feel like
Yes.
you're doing this weekly right now, Ziggy. This is
A lot of pressure.
fantastic.
Good work,
Wow.
Ziggy, on the investigative journalism.
Wow. I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
still your fault that this episode happened, but a way to come back and
True.
almost make up for it.
You almost made up for it.
Almost. You almost
Sure.
did.
Whatever you say.
Yeah, thank you. So at the end of this, we do get the edit, which we don't have the clip of it. I know I sent it to you guys and how awful it was, how awkward it was, where you had the little record scratch and then Steve and Mike come back in. So they get the Brandon Walker sound. And I know that everybody on the internet, everybody on Twitter was very heated about this on Wednesday. It trickled in Wednesday night, and then it was all going after baby Brandon all the time. And then Thursday hit, and then Brandon shot back. But before we get all of that, what was your initial thought when you heard it VD? When you first heard that sound of what Brandon was saying and the joke that he went for with Kirk, or as he is saying it's a joke, what were you thinking?
To be honest, the joke about not everyone can take a mental timeout, I had no problem with. I understand Minifans' initial reaction is to be very sensitive about it because it's a very real thing, but even every time I've been re-listening to old episodes during this hiatus, like, you got to just remember, you got to remove yourself from the joke and say, okay, could someone else find this funny? And yes, like, some of the things Kirk has said on the podcast are, when you re-listen to them, they're hilarious to us. But like, if you're a Chris Curtis fan or something, you're not gonna find it very funny. So it's important for me to kind of like, you got to remove your emotions from the joke. And even if it was, I don't really think it was necessarily a joke. I think there's some truth to what he was saying. Like, it was a little bit of a jab. It's masked in a joke. It's like what Blind Mike likes to do. He kind of throws something out there and then can just say it's a joke whenever he gets some heat for it. But I really had no problem for it. I did have a problem with the snake behavior of him going behind everybody's back.
Absolutely.
Texting Erica, not even an email or, you're in the office at the same time and not importantly to Erica.
Absolutely.
That is concerning behavior, especially when Kirk has always been pretty cool with Brandon Walker. And it seemed like they had a little bit of a mutual respect. But he did try to he pulled his best Ziggy Robinson impression and tried to backtrack as quickly as he could on the radio and was just like, yeah, I'm a pussy. I admit it.
Yeah, he said he acted like a bitch. Like he was a bitch about it.
So there is no him coming back for anything because you can just play that clip of him saying, I'm a pussy. I was a bitch. I shouldn't have done it. The whole time I was listening to the update episode, I was concerned because I was like, shit, Brandon Walker's going to listen to this and like, it's going to be very easy for him to come back to this. If he's smart, he'll do it when Kirk is gone. And it seems like, he obviously picked up on that pretty quick.
When Blind Mike is telling you to shut the fuck up, it's ready to ride, man. You got to respond right away.
Yeah.
You got to do it. And so I know what my opinions were on it. And I know Ziggy and I disagreed. Here's the thing, though. I also know that Steve Robinson and Ziggy, the initial reaction, you guys were in lockstep. So you guys were in agreement. And I know when you guys zig, I zag. I'm going the opposite way.
You're just going to use my trademark like that?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to use it against you.
He zagged it.
I zagged it. So
sure.
I'm going the art of war on you. I'm going to use your tactics against you. So when you and Steve are hearing this, Ziggy, and you guys are in lockstep, you were very upset with Brandon Walker. Do you want to get into how everything transpired the day you heard that? Because there is an interesting story.
So, there is. So, first off, I said I would try to be positive tonight. So I will say it was good instincts from Mike and Steve to get back in the studio. Because,
absolutely.
I mean, it was bad instincts that Steve didn't record his call with Brandon. Maybe we can get into that later. But it was good instincts that they re-recorded so we'd at least have their reaction. I'd like to think of myself as pretty level-headed when people are taking shots at Kirk or the Minifans. But as you said, Red, his joke kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I acknowledge like Mike that it was a joke. But I I don't know if he has like the right to say that Kirk could take the joke and he would maybe make it himself. That sounds a little Matt from Providence, but he's not one of us. So it's tricky. Like I see classic Ziggy, I see both sides.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very possible Kirk would be fine with it. And I'm sure he probably would be fine with it. But what bothered me most is Brandon not understanding like why the Minifans would be mad with the joke, because we're all on edge. We don't know how Kirk is doing. We don't know like the future of the show. So
Right.
My first instinct was being kind of pissed that he was in a heated argument with Portnoy, and then he just pivoted, deflected, made a joke at Kirk's behalf. And yeah, again, Kirk probably would have taken it fine, but like from the Minifans' perspective, I don't blame anyone for being mad.
Yeah, I don't blame anyone from having an initial reaction of anger. It's an attack from the outside, right? So it's like, okay, everybody man the wall, get your positions. But at the end of the day, I don't think it was a scummy move from him. I also don't think it was that much of a joke. I think it was classic. Like he really thought that
right.
he was going to say it's a joke. And then honestly, I think his whole thing on Twitter of him being like, oh, Joe, Kirk would understand it. I think he said that in the moment and then was like, oh shit, did I just really fuck up? And has just been trying to like cover his tracks aggressively. Because he knows. Yeah, go ahead.
I could see that. Well, I was just going to say, like, I could see that. He has no idea that we're 3 weeks into this.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the fans that are struggling, and we've had people that have taken a timeout from Twitter, and others that probably should take a timeout from Twitter. There's people there's hurt feelings everywhere, and people are worried about Kirk, and their daily show is gone, and everything else that goes into it. So he has no idea that's going on, too. So he makes this joke. And I'll take him at his word. Like he's saying it's a joke. I believe him. He seems like he's somebody like Big Cat who's going to go for the joke. Like those two guys seem like two guys to me from following Brandon for a year now. Like he's a guy I think he's a pretty funny dude, and he's always going for the joke, and he's pretty self-deprecating too.
Yeah.
And he was after this happened as well. So I'll take him at his word that he's going for a joke. It was a tense situation. My biggest thing is like in a perfect world, he doesn't do that, but this is not a perfect world. And Portnoy is fucking going at him, and he's right in the crosshairs. So this is what happens. And I love this show for a lot of different reasons. I love this community for a lot of different reasons. And one of them is it's a place for dark humor, which I really love. So even in this Relisten episode that we're going to go through, you hear Kirk talking and making light of the fact that Steve Robinson's sister-in-law died from brain cancer, and he's kind of giggling, like smirking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And Steve's playing along with it, and he does a good job of that. We're still that community. We're still those people. There's still a place for humor. So this isn't a memorial. Like when you have that podcast where you have somber sounds and talking about Kirk as if he's already gone, like that's not what this is about. This is a community where we're going to have some fun. We're going to crack some jokes. I'm going to wear my shirt where Kirk is running away from the train. Like, we're going to have some fun with this. Like, don't forget to laugh. So I can understand where Brandon Walker's coming from, but it's a tough spot to be in when you've got, Minifans that are emotional right now, and I understand that too.
There's nothing that screams fun like a nice condescending red rant.
Ooh.
No, I agree with everything.
I'm just kidding. Calm down, buddy. Calm down.
Okay, jeez, unbelievable.
Classic Ziggy. I do think it's important to note that it's easy to get down on Barstool sometimes, but that radio segment from Portnoy is like a big reminder as to why Barstool is like the best company for Kirk to be at. Him absolutely just murdering Brandon Walker on air, giving us the baby Brandon nickname, which is I think KFC or someone tweeted like that's not going anywhere. Like that's gonna be a tough one to shake.
Absolutely.
And then also I think I DM'd it to maybe both of you or just Ziggy, but there was a tweet from like 2 weeks ago where it was a Barstool radio tweet, and it was like Brandon Walker has just handcuffed himself to Nick or KB or something, and Portnoy had quote tweeted it and said, or it was a K Marco tweet. And Portnoy had, quote tweeted it and said, "Did B-Walk go to management?" And I remember looking back at that, like in the moment, we all thought it was, oh, K Marco is the one that complained. But
exactly.
I mean, Portnoy put it right out there for us that it was Brandon Walker. And
you must have skipped over this part of the podcast when Mike and Steve talked about this, VD.
What?
The tweet. K Marco's tweet.
Yeah, I know they talked about it, but
All right, just making sure. We give
Yeah.
Mike a hard time for not being prepped. I just wanted to make sure you were
yeah,
properly prepped for the episode.
no, I was.
but VD is doing a better job of talking about it than
This
either
is
one of
true.
those two jabronis.
I'll
So
let
that's
Ziggy
fine.
take it from here. I'll let Ziggy take it from here.
You were
No,
on
what-
a roll, VD. Unbelievable. You should.
I
use
was
that
on a
right
roll.
now.
I
You
step
were.
on jokes. I step on rolls.
He was going.
It's
No,
what I do.
But this is the thing. I remember when you DM'd it to me, and I thought the first thing when I first saw it, I remember when it was quote tweeted out there. I think it was a Thursday. I remember I was at a practice and it came out, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Like clearly this is K Marco. He was the one who did this.
Yeah,
But when you look at it back now, it makes perfect sense. But I initially thought it was an Ellie Schnitt K Marco thing. I had no idea it was a Kate thing because we had all forgotten about Kate. Like it was literally nothing until Turtle Boy tweeted at her.
and that's what I was getting to. Is like that's how you know it was
Before you were rudely interrupted by Giggy. Yeah, the floor is yours.
That's how you know it was snake behavior from Brandon Walker because it got laid out there right for us, and we all just looked past it because it was like, no, Brandon Walker would never complain to management. Like we have a good relationship with him, so it just puts everything in perspective.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think so Red, you hinted at earlier that I had a story about Brandon when it first happened. So Brandon was added to a private chat with some Minifans soon after this happened, like very soon after this happened. So we got his initial reaction. Someone said, "We're disappointed in you, Brandon," kind of give him a hard time. And I told him basically it's what did I say? I basically said it's hard to take what you said as a joke when you are in the midst of an argument, not about Kirk. And I was giving him a hard time. I mean, I thought it was being pretty level with him, and he was going back and forth. It was nice that he was engaging with us.
Absolutely.
And what ended up happening was Red threw me under the bus. He said, "It's okay to hate Ziggy. Everyone hates Ziggy."
Yep.
Everyone turned on me. I got kicked. Someone tried to kick me out of the chat.
Yep.
And then I told Brandon that he's just jealous that Kirk knows more 80s sports trivia than him. And
you got
Brandon,
very sensitive in there.
Maybe Brandon blocked me. No, I wasn't being. Well, I was being sensitive because, like I said, my initial reaction was that I was upset. So I was just calmly saying, "This is why I'm upset. This is why the Minifans are going to be upset." I told him my advice would be to lean into it, play along, and you'll be fine. And then I got blocked. So, baby Brandon, it is what it is.
Are you taking credit for how he responded on Thursday?
Very subtly, very subtly.
Maybe.
Okay. And did you backtrack? Because it feels like you're backtracking on this. Like,
it's hard to keep up, to be honest, where I stand at any given point.
Does it physically hurt to be such a gutless pussy about this?
I had that to use during.
Did you? I had to get to it. I had to get to it first.
Yeah.
Because you were so mad in that chat. I was fortunate enough to be there.
No, I will defend.
I was mad for me. Sure.
You weren't
for you. You were mad,
but you were being level-headed. I think.
Yes,
I was.
Yes. Yeah. Again, this is all relative. This wasn't like Red angry. This was Ziggy angry.
No one wants to see that.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that. So you were very upset about this, but then Thursday happens, and it seemed like you were coming over to our side of the street, and not dissimilar to what Steve Robinson tweeted out, where he was saying, "Oh, I just had a phone call, and we certainly cleared the air because we made some mistakes," or whatever. However, Steve phrased it, meaning that Steve and Mike weren't all prepared and ready and had the information, had some bad takes on it. Steve backtracked. Are you backtracking? Are you with Steve? It seems like you and Steve.
No, I'm not backtracking. So the first time I heard it, like I said, I was mad, and then I re-listened. I was like, okay, yeah, I do hear he's joking. I'm not bound to my first thought, as VD likes to quote Dr. Young.
Sure. Yeah.
I think Steve said it was a mean. So Mike's stance was that he admitted it was a joke. He was still upset. He was also upset about Brandon's snake behavior. Going to Erica, and Mike made a good point that he has Kirk's number. He should have reached out to Kirk.
Easily could have texted him.
Steve's take was it was a mean and nasty thing to say, which is like verbatim what Trump says. Mean and nasty, like it wasn't mean and nasty, and I never said it was.
He was Steve was clutching of the pearls in that episode. He was amping it up. He even went as far to say it was assault.
Yeah,
what Brandon did, which is. It's true, technically true, But that's just Steve being Steve.
Steve's on stage at that moment. And
He went as far as to say it was offensive to the Marine Corps that Brandon was stepping in for Kate, and he said it was misogynistic that he was stepping in for a woman. I mean, those are big
drama queen.
And he said that right after he said, and I haven't talked to Kate, so I don't know how she feels, but
I'm gonna tell her how to. You're forgetting that we were dealing with S.E. Robinson and not Steve, because there was some political talk before that. He snapped into S.E. and he couldn't snap back out of it.
There was a lot of dick swagger with Steve Robinson.
One thing I do want to say about, I think it was Steve who kind of touched on it in the episode. He's like, yeah, there was some part of me that was like, oh, Brandon's being loyal to Kate, and it's kind of cool to see him like stand up for his work wife. He kept saying that. I don't know why he was so obsessed with that term. It's just a coworker that's a female, but he was like, some part of me kind of respected the loyalty, and that's what made me mad, because Brandon Walker has a Twitter account. If he wanted to jump in on Twitter that night and say, fuck off Minifans, like, Kate's going through, or be playful with it and make some kind of joke, he absolutely could have done that. There's like him saying, oh, I have your back, but I'm going to go cry to Erica and Dave to tell them to step in. Like, that's not having your back. That was him saying, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I don't want to get myself involved because it's probably going to be inconvenient for me. So I'm going to try to do something else. So I think it is important to note that, he obviously has a Twitter. He could have jumped in. He could have gotten the mud. He could have had her back. He didn't. He took the snake route. He texted Erica, baby Brandon, the end.
He made mistakes, and I'll end it with this, and then we'll get on to the re-listen, because I don't want to go too deep into this, because Lord knows I can't be right all the time, and I'm tired of rubbing Ziggy's nose in it. But he responded. He said he was a bitch about it, and on Thursday he did a great job of engaging with the fans and getting after it and shitting on Mike and Steve and shitting on Mike's Cheers podcast. So, I was happy to see it. It was interesting to have that happen on Wednesday, to get that Thursday, and see it now. It seems to all die down. We'll see how it, Kirk responds to it when he gets back, because I know he'll be back whenever. Let
me wrap it up, Red. I got two things. So the first thing, probably the funniest part of the episode, was Steve saying, when they're talking about the Baby Brandon nickname, he said, I was a lot worse than Baby Brandon. I came up with a lot worse nicknames like Bad Haircut Brandon or Beats People Up Brandon.
It just rolls right off the tongue.
Beats People Up Brandon. Hashtag it. Trend it worldwide.
Sick burn.
Yeah. And then the last thing I will say, I told Brandon to lean into it, be playful, you'll be fine. He took my advice. However, I don't like it because I'm blocked. I have to go to the burner all the time to see his tweets. I don't like it. I don't know how you do it, Red. I don't know how you do. I don't know how you live being blocked by everyone. It's very tiring.
It's tough, that's the cross I carry every day, but it is what it is.
Not all heroes wear capes.
That's right.
All right, we've got a guest today. We always say we want people to disagree with us. We look for people that disagree. I know Blind Mike always tries to disagree with me, right, Mike?
Yes, indeed.
You're not Mike. Steve, dummy. Jesus Christ.
Oh boy.
Always on his game. This
Hold
guy.
on. Can I? The amount of money I get paid, I don't even understand. It doesn't make any sense. I have a cult following, and I have with you two.
Not yet. Not good. Not proud of this one.
I am. So Steve, I don't understand. So you
Steve, I was going
to
say.
You want Steve to say something as Blind Mike or
no?
Oh, okay.
I wanted Mike to say nothing.
There was no communication.
And shit on him for not talking during an interview is what I was going to do. But Steve thought he was supposed to be Mike, and that fucked everything up.
What is Marantz guy thinking at this point? All right, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you, he'll see what he's thinking.
Go ahead.
Working with. Always on his game, this guy. Best in the business. Mike, right? You're always disagreeing with me. Great, good. Love to have you here. Terrific. But today we have a guy that actually does disagree with us, and that is Andrew Marantz. His book is Antisocial. Andrew, how are we today? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I'm
now we're getting into.
Now
we're getting into where I mix.
Yeah, I got you. No, it's complicated. I'm following.
I'm doing you, but I'm also now trying to sprinkle in references.
No, I understand. I've got it. No, I managed to follow it so far.
It's
not been easy.
This is where it unravels. Yeah.
Oh, it hasn't unraveled yet?
Okay,
it gets worse?
It unraveled pretty quickly.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, okay. I mean, hola, first of all, good to have you all aboard. Love to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, good. Great to have you on the show. All right, terrific, absolutely. So
Now this
Andrew,
is where I don't.
We read an
I
article.
lose my mind. You sound like you don't know what to do.
I don't at all.
All right, so back to what the re-listen and what this all about is. This is all about. This is the October episode of Robinson's Rules. Is where we're first introduced to the Robinson's Rules, and we're introduced to a little bit more of Mike. I know we were talking about this earlier, where the October episodes are really, really good, and this one has a lot of stuff in there, even just random little notes for us as fans of the show. I know I listened to this episode a few times and forgot about how good this Marantz interview is, and when I say how good it is, how cringeworthy it is, and how much you're feeling for Mike at that point. So I listened to that episode, that particular part of the episode, a lot, and Mike was not happy with it, and it seemed like Kirk was in a bad mood at the start of the episode, but then he perked up when this came on. The instincts of Mike to do a Kirk Minihane impression with also dropping in show references and talking about Dave Cullinane and the Instagram and everything else. I don't know when you first heard this, VD, because I know that you came into the show late. So I don't know if you heard this when it first came out.
I was live. Yeah, I was live.
That was live.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're coming into it. You're a new fan. You know, what are you thinking during this? Because I was stunned to hear it the first time and to hear Mike's reasoning for doing it. No, none of it made sense to me. I don't know what it was like for you.
None of it made sense, and I think the initial thing that jumped out to me, even more so than Mike's lack of interviewing talent, was just like, I could recognize, all right, okay, I'll be a suck pump here for a second, but the genius of Kirk just to like throw that to Mike and Steve kind of last second, not giving them any time to prep. I mean, even if like Blind Mike had time to prep, it wouldn't have made that much of a difference. It would have been terrible, but probably in a different way. So it's just like, classic puppet master Kirk just knows how to get content out of Mike and Steve. And just the thought of Mike and Steve going down to Halfway Cafe, like, all right, yeah, we got 20 minutes or something to prep for this interview. And Steve trying to explain to Mike what this guy's book was about. It's all just hilarious to me. Almost Mike's interview is almost the least important part. It's just like a beautifully painted scenario set by Kirk, and Blind Mike does what he does best and just absolutely bundles it.
I can't. I wish that Marantz somehow came back into the world and they could have an interview with him. Just maybe down the road, if they could have him come back in and Kirk could talk about how bad that was, and they could all just, maybe come together in that moment, because it was cringeworthy. And for me, I could hear on this re-listen how much that Mike and Steve were really digging at each other, almost like brothers that were like dying for Dad's attention and getting his approval. They were really cutting in on each other during this as they were selling this interview to Kirk, and then later on in the episode too. Ziggy, your boy Steve Robinson, left. It felt like he left Mike hanging out to dry in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely left him hanging out to dry. I don't want to take away the suck pump of Kirk from VD, but I did listen to the end of the previous episode, which was the 4-hour marathon episode, and at the very end, like Kirk clearly doesn't want to do it, and I think Mike, I don't know if Mike suggested he do it, but Kirk kind of just was like, maybe we should just blow it off or have Mike do it. So Kirk's a genius. I don't think this was his genius showing here, because it was almost like a throwaway. And then Mike, actually, again, trying to be positive here, Mike said, why don't I just do show references? And Kirk was like, yep, that's a good idea. Just do it. And we want to hammer Mike. It's the dead horse that's been beaten every episode, every time we talk, anytime anyone talks about the show, the dead horse of Mike being unprepared. But you can't blame him for only having an hour to prepare. You can blame him for the poor instincts or the last minute decision of doing the Kirk impression on top of the show references, on top of trying to have a conversation on a topic he knows nothing about.
How bad of an impression is that? Does that sound anything like Kirk?
No, it sounds not. Well, there's a couple times like you can hear the inflection, and I think that was Mike's excuse. Like, oh, I was going for the inflection, not the voice. I mean, he was trying to do the voice, but yeah, it was I think Steve said cringy, and I don't blame Steve here for leaving him out to dry. The beauty of the podcast in general, not just this one, but like the entire show, to me, is how they react to sound. And with here, it's like it was either Mike executed it perfectly and they're laughing with Mike, dropping the references as if it's a prank call, or they're laughing at Mike at how poorly he bundled it, like VD said. And the latter is always going to be better, is laughing at someone.
I will give credit to Mike. Like, the actual interview was terrible, but like you said, Ziggy, them going through and listening to the sound, he was actually pretty funny in the way, just like you could hear in his voice, he was so embarrassed for what was about to happen. Right. And he's just trying to explain. It was Justin would have loved it because it was a view into the stream of consciousness of Mike Geary and him. Like, you can hear at one point, he's like, yeah, you know what? I realized that an interview is just like way different than a prank call because they're listening. And it's like you can hear him say it, and it's like a groundbreaking moment in his head, and every listener is just like, well, obviously. But Mike. Sometimes Mike moves at his own speeds, but I'll give him credit. Like, he played along with it, not like he had an option, but he was very funny and kind of the re-listening part of it.
And I can't stress this enough. This guy wrote a book on the subject that Mike read an article on, and Mike thought he could keep up a conversation with him on top of the impression, on top of the show references.
Right.
That's a tall task.
You can hear Marantz like really quickly just kind of sniff the whole thing out.
He bodied him.
And for him, it's definitely a Ziggy Robinson. Like, I remember where I was when I heard this moment. Like you were saying, Red, it would be great to kind of get his perspective on it, because I guarantee you he remembers that, because he would have hung up the phone and been like, what the fuck just happened?
What the fuck just happened to me?
So, where was it that he wrote articles for? Was it the New York Post? Or
it was an op-ed for, I think, the New York Post.
I thought it was the New Yorker.
New Yorker. Yeah.
And so at the end, Steve said that he didn't even follow up with him, which I wonder if in hindsight that could be part of the reason why they don't get, or for a time weren't getting guests, because if anyone at the New Yorker is approached by Steve and they're going to do their due diligence and ask around, Marantz is going to be like, no, do not talk to these guys. They're just trying to pull one over on you.
Yeah.
Producer Steve dropping the ball, right, VD?
No, I think it probably has contributed slightly, but no one from there wants to come on the show anyway. But I agree with you. It didn't help.
So we get Steve Robinson, who's dropping the ball there, maybe, possibly. And then we get, in this episode, we get the introduction to Robinson's rules.
You always go to a funeral. You always go to a wedding. It's a rule.
I hate weddings, and why would I want to go to a funeral?
It's just a rule.
Give me some other rules. Steve Robinson's rules. It's
you don't swim 30 minutes after you eat.
At Steve Robinson's rules taken? No? Okay, there you go. See, that's a Twitter account that got some legs. What?
Yeah, Steve Robinson rules.
Give me some other Steve Robinson rules.
I mean, some are aunts and some are ants.
Right.
That's a rule.
But I'm serious. What,
Well, I'm trying to think. I mean, you always clean up after yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Do the dishes.
Some rules.
If you're working,
not surprisingly, it's the most boring list of rules I've ever heard in my life.
If you're working and you're perspiring, you take your shirt off.
That's a good rule. It's a Robinson rule right there. When you're away from the wife, it's fast food time.
Yes.
The first Cullinane rule.
What's that?
There are no rules.
Fuck it. Oh God, that's a rules. Funeral invitation.
For me, I wasn't a Steve hater at the time. This was like mind-blowing to just kind of peel back the onion of Steve Robinson and to be a suck pump for Kirk. This is the greatness of Kirk, to kind of like just sit in this. We're gonna figure out what the hell the Robinson's rules are. Whether it's always clean up after yourself. Whenever you get invited to a funeral, you got to go thing is an interesting move by Steve, because I've never gotten an invite to a funeral, which I don't think anybody has. It's an odd rule to have. He's an odd person. For me, I couldn't listen to this enough now, and I wish that we had this opportunity to have this at Sacco when he was supposed to read it from his journal, where there's this list of rules. I don't know, I think it's 21 or 31 rules, whatever it is. He's got this. He's got some rules in his journal. He says, I want to know what they are. But I want you guys to tell me what your guess is for a Robinson rule. So VD, if you could please, do you have any guesses of what a Robinson rule is that he has in his journal right now?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a couple. It's either I'm guessing there's going to be one related to like never keep your gun loaded in the house. You know, some kind of gun safety Robinson rule.
Yep.
There's probably a don't litter Robinson rule, or like
leave no trace.
Leave your campsite cleaner than you found it type thing. I'm trying to think of there's probably some parenting ones in there that he's implemented for his future generations of Robinsons. I can't think of exactly what they would be, but there's definitely some weird shit in there. I'll concede that.
And I'm sure, Ziggy, you've got something in there. I'm sure.
So I mean, I'm totally unprepared. You just asked us on the spot, so I didn't have anything.
Yeah, of course.
No, I think what we've eventually found out is Steve wrote these in college or around the Bowdoin days. So I'm sure there was something college related, like always sit at the front of the class.
Oh yeah.
And I could just see him like taking common phrases but adding his own twist to them. Always buy good shoes, good sheets, good tires, and good underwear. I think in the past he said in the Tommy John reads, he's talked about the importance of always spending money on good underwear. Another one I thought was always be first in, last out, whether on the dance floor or the practice field. We know he's a big dancer at weddings, probably a big dancer at wakes. Wouldn't surprise me there. And then I'm pretty sure that instead of just like life rules, there are some life hacks in there. So a couple that at least I live to, and I bet Steve would, because Red, as you say, we're very similar.
Very similar.
Fill up on bread and just get an appetizer. You'll save money you don't have to buy the main course.
That's good,
and then this isn't a rule, but I guarantee you, Steve Robinson uses a straight razor to shave his face. So there might be something about a straight razor. I couldn't think of the rule, the phrasing, but he's just a straight razor guy. You can tell.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I think probably there's a rule in there about over salting your meats. I think there's got to be that rule. I don't think he has any rules on ice fishing, because Lord knows he doesn't know how to ice fish, as we saw in Madawaska. The other rule that I thought of is maybe, anytime that you are facing tough times as a show and the community is having tough times, anytime you can just light that tinderbox and blow it up and alienate half of your fan base right before you go to subscription service, you have to do it.
I think Howie taught him that one.
Yeah, that's got to be a rule in there, I think, probably somewhere. And then also, too, anytime you can ghostwrite a book, do it. Always.
I think that's right next to right after the never let roadkill go to waste rule.
Yeah, it's right there.
Which is mentioned in his Bowdoin Orient writings, I will say.
Oh, it's of course. Yeah. And of course, number one rule, I think, is owning libs. It's got to be
owning libs at all times. It's funny, after they kind of dive into this whole Robinson rules things and they come out the other side, they're like, how did we just get there? And Big Steve drops a classic like, oh, I think Kirk was just probing my mind, So anytime you probe the mind of S.E. Robinson, you're going to find something interesting. That's why he's a content guy, unintentionally or intentionally, and that's why he's the best producer for the show.
I would say unintentionally funny and unintentionally, giving of weird things. I think Steve does a lot of things that are unintentionally great for the show.
I'm glad you said that, because I think this is one of the first instances where he kind of realizes like leaning into his weirdness. Like he had done it a couple times earlier on in the show, but at this point in the show, it's October. He's really comfortable with where he's at. And I think this was a big lesson for him to kind of lean into those little weird traits he has.
Absolutely.
See, absolutely. I think I have a good nose for sniffing out when Steve is is intentionally leaning into it. I don't think he was leaning into it for show. He was leaning into it because he's naturally stubborn.
Right.
But there are definitely times where he says stupid things because he knows there's going to be a reaction. But this was the classic, like my favorite part in the podcast is when Steve says something dumb, Mike or Kirk will kind of blow by it, but then the other one will pick up on it and be like, hey, wait a minute. What did you just say? And Mike was the one that got it this time, again, to his credit. Because Kirk was just going to let it slide. I think Steve first said always or never turn down an invitation to a wedding or a funeral, and Kirk was just focused on the wedding part.
Right.
That's what the discussion was about. The best part of the segment was the riffing back and forth between Mike and Kirk. Like it was kind of like a tango or a square dance where one person's leading. Like Kirk would lead the riffing from talking about like, hey, you want to catch this funeral next week, and then they're going down like the sports scouting route, and then they're going down, being invited to a party. Oh, Steve's going to take his shirt off. Like it was great back and forth between them two. And then on the other side is Steve trying to be all poetic with like, funerals are just a meaningful part of the human experience.
Yeah.
Funerals are emotionally fraught occasions.
Yeah. He said, people die, Mike.
And so this moves kind of seamlessly to the next segment here. This is a good segue where Steve mentions something about the emotional experience, and then also, geez, what else was there in there? There was so many little things that Steve says that is just so weird. Bring Jesus into your heart or whatever. Brother. Yeah. Drops a brother on Kirk, and Kirk tries to just like kind of moves past it for a second. Then he just says Jesus. He just says Jesus.
And then a little bit later, he comes back to, he's like, why did you just say brother?
Yeah.
You know? But I have the most vivid image in my head of Big Steve at his brother's wedding, no shirt, tie on his head.
Which wedding?
Yes, either one. Tie on his head, just like Mike said, just dancing to like Shout, like on stage.
Love Shack. Definitely.
Yeah, he's perfect. If you think about it though, like Big Steve is the perfect wedding guest because he can give a good speech. We know that. He can write you a speech. He can dance according to him, and if you need catering advice, like he'll whip up some lamb vindaloo, he'll put something together.
That's true.
He can write a good speech, but if he's at a funeral, he can write a good googly, as Steve dropped in the episode.
Yeah,
man. Oh, geez, that was cringe.
Those are the intentional stupid things he's trying to get a reaction that
they never stick though. I think Kirk has a pretty good
he does
way to sniff it out. Yeah.
Well, and so Steve will say those things, and Kirk just moves past it. Mike does the same thing, where I think he said he wanted to be stuffed, at his funeral.
Yeah.
And then Kirk just moves
on.
All
right, play another call. Another prank call.
We're not doing this. I'm not going down this path. So Mike was reaching, trying to get stuff in there because I think he was reeling from that Marantz interview.
Yeah. And that's the genius of Kirk. He knows Mike is reaching, and the last thing he wants is Mike to gain a little confidence.
He's going to no-sell the shit out of that.
He'll no-sell the shit out of anything he says.
Perfect. So with the prank calls, I obviously the Tim and Canton call to Father Larry was amazing, going over Slobgate and everything else. Some of the other prank calls that I loved was the one that was in that Mike did to DC, where he wanted it to be Virginia, and he was like campaigning to get Virginia on the board, get it off the board. That was a great call. I'm not a great prank caller. I don't know if you guys have done any prank calling. I know we're going to talk about this in this episode. I've done a few. Ziggy, I think you're a pretty decent caller into the Kirk Minihane show. Have you done any prank calling?
No, I've actually never done a prank call. I've never called I've never called EEI just as a regular caller. So my only experience is calling in to Kirk's show, and when I hear like a Tim and Canton call, I know Mutt used to give him a hard time, like trying to step all over it, saying, "Oh, you're just reading the script. Just keep reading the script, Tim." I know Tim doesn't read a script. I would love to see, like, he's got to have notes, and
Absolutely.
I don't know if he's got like, all right, here's point A, and then you draw an arrow to point B or point C. I would love to see a screenshot of his notes.
He's talked about his notes before. I don't know if it was on the OG show or something. He says he has a notebook where when he's listening to the show, the main show, and he hears like Kirk mention like a Sensei Nathan or just something random, he writes it down. So I think he has a list of like references he can drop, but I think the rest is pure.
But he's got to plan out like the call to the priest. Like he's got to have a plan for, okay, definitely. Here are the references I'm going to drop in this specific call. Because there's some calls you can tell they're basically just reading a script like that.
They pull
the girl that called the Philly station was just reading a script at the first part.
Yeah, they pull the Stin Man and they just barrel right through a script. And there's a place for that. It can be a good call, but I think the Matt from Providence is the Tim from Canton's. You hear that kind of on the feet improvisation where it's like they had somewhere they want to go with it, but then the radio host will give them an opportunity, and they know how to just slide right in with a good.
I'll say this: if I'm going to be a contrarian, I do love that you brought the Stin Man up. He is all gas, no brakes when it comes to when he's going for it. He's got his script. Matt from Providence, he's a script reader. I know that he is. You can hear it. Yeah, when he was going, at least with that last one they had with the Mincel Intel, where he was going through what each letter meant. He was reading that script pretty hard. Tim does a great job of, you can hear his bullet points in there, his references, and then he just kind of vamps a little bit. He's good about knowing what the topic is on the show too. Yeah. So he's a fantastic. He's my favorite caller for a lot of different reasons.
He's incredibly prolific. I think a lot of that the way he navigates through those calls comes with experience. I've heard rumors that he has just been calling international radio shows during this hiatus just for fun and just prank calling people for fun. So he's a self-proclaimed prank call legend. I give him that. He's the best in the biz.
How good is Steve Robinson, Ziggy? He's a great prank caller, isn't he? I know.
Don't put me on the spot, because he is actually pretty good. Mike is good too. I mean, you got to give Mike credit here.
It seems like that's where he's most comfortable.
Yeah, and which is a little surprising because, again, I would assume he has to put some prep into those calls.
Right.
Because I mean, it at least seems like he's putting prep into the calls and
stay positive. Positive.
Well, Kirk mentions it in the show. Like at this point in time, and maybe even it's still true a little bit. Mike was kind of the prank call guy. Like he was like, oh yeah, so he had a little bit of confidence surrounding prank.
Right.
Calls.
He could only do like 5 of the 50 because he was so confident in it.
Right.
And I guess I'm being positive because I think back in October, Mike was more confident on the show. He had more. He had more of an in. Like he did the impressions, which I know Kirk liked for the most part. Like the Big Daddy Graham impression, that's just a random person that he could do an impression of. It got a couple laughs here and there. They've kind of gotten away from that. I don't know if that's something Mike needs to be pushing more. I mean, he can always be doing prank calls. He does them occasionally, but I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with Mike. Is not to derail us, but I think he's just regressed. Like he was better on the show at this point in October than he is now. And maybe it's a confidence thing. I don't know.
There's no questioning that listening back to old episodes, there's just kind of a hunger that's there. So I think that's maybe, at least for me, where I get frustrated sometimes is like, I know it could be better. But yeah, let's not get derailed on that.
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this in the past, like there has been that regression, and he is feeling it now more than ever with these 3 weeks, this layoff, while Kirk is away taking care of his business. Mike is hearing the chirps from everybody that he hasn't muted. So like that's just where he's at. But when you're listening back to these episodes in October, Mike is, for the most part, I know he had this slip up here in this episode. Like he's a totally different guy and seems to be, other than his issues that he's got with Steve, which plays out later on in November when Kirk has to sort through the family business, I think was the title of the episode, because Steve Robinson is so smart. He keeps using that because he watched The Godfather one time. This is Mike at his peak, and then here we are now, and I think he'll bounce back, but we're going to keep it positive, man. We're going to keep it moving.
To be positive, he had a pretty good go for Gary this week. He went the whole. Wait.
Oh no.
Yeah. Shots taken.
Yeah.
But this was an important episode for Mike. He learned that prank calls are different than interviews, and he learned that the District of Columbia is in fact not in Virginia.
That's true.
Yes. And he somehow learned that there was actually a blind long snapper in college football. I don't know how he was unaware of that. There was a guy for USC. It was like all over ESPN and SportsCenter at the time.
They cranked the shit out of that story every halftime.
I would be confident that if I was blind, my blind trivia would be right on point. I know that. Like if you want to talk about like great bald guys through history, I got you, man. I'm ready to go. I can just rattle off names. I'm good. But it is what it is.
Yes.
Better luck next time. All right. So the after show, after everything that Relisten, this is current events, things we want to get into. This is something that was talked about Wednesday, a little bit with Steve and Mike, and then played out on Twitter on Thursday, talking about the Carano and Blind Mike Sneakers situation. We felt like it was important to talk about it just because we have experience in Discord, Twitter, more so than what Mike and Steve might see. For me, we're going to get into it a little bit more, but I'm just glad that we have the conversation so we can hopefully bring some context to it, because I'm tired of seeing it play out, but also not having it really be talked about because there seems to be a lot of blocking and everything else going on Twitter. So, Ziggy, with everything that went on with Mike and Steve and how they sold it on Wednesday, could you please maybe enlighten us a little bit on, give us some background on what's going on with Carano and Blind Mike Sneakers?
Yeah, so if it sounds like I'm reading from a script, it's because I'm reading from a script because I don't want to get any of the facts incorrect. So these are the facts as I have seen them play out, and I can back them up with screenshots and whatnot if you want to ask me after. So last Sunday, someone started tweeting at Blind Mike Sneakers and threatened to dox him and posted some photos of his house. Sneakers thought it was Matt Carano doing it, so he posted in the Discord that he had Matt's address. Matt screenshotted that Discord message and stated that anyone who follows Sneakers will get blocked on Twitter. That upset some people and caused division amongst fans. In the meantime, Twitter accounts were being created that were tweeting out Sneakers' address and tweeting at his wife. Sneakers thinks Matt is behind this, so he kept threatening Matt, calling him a dead man and going after him, making threats. Things then kind of seemed to settle down a little bit. But then on Thursday, Big Steve and Mike started tweeting about it and kind of blaming the Mincel Intel guys for supporting Sneakers, and then that reignited everything, caused even more of a division. And then now today, Friday's been pretty quiet, and I am left wondering why I'm so invested in a world centered around a podcast when the podcast is currently on hiatus.
Right.
And why am I not making better decisions with my time?
Here we are on a Friday night talking about a podcast that's not even around right now. We're talking about episodes that happened last year and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's crazy to be a part of this world, to see this and be in this community and see this stuff play out on Twitter. I know I have some pretty strong thoughts and opinions. Before I get there, VD, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, well, it gets even sadder, Ziggy, because I spent my evening in random Periscopes and TikTok live streams from around the world trying to get people to comment on the Carano versus Sneakers war, which I had a couple successes. But yeah, that's how I'm spending my time these days. But yeah, I think it is important. I've never heard anyone kind of put all the facts in one place, so I'm glad we can kind of do that. My opinions on the situation, I may be criticized for being a middleman, or I may be criticized by both sides for, not picking a side. But to me, there's no point in kind of speculating who is more wrong in this little argument. I think both parties have done things that I don't agree with. I do think it's important to note that before any of this war kicked off, there was already some tension probably underneath the surface between the two parties. I would equate it just to different friend groups in high school grade. It's you're not enemies necessarily, but they probably were both talking shit behind each other's backs. And then out of nowhere, the show goes away. And I think a lot of these tensions start to come to the surface. I do think it's important to say Sneakers, yes, he's an asshole. Yes, he's a troll. He'll admit that to you, but it is important to note that he was getting threats as well. I don't think that will get represented fully to Steve and Mike. But like I said, there's no point in arguing who started it, who's more wrong. I think we're getting close to moving past it. For me, just getting blocked out of nowhere by Carano when I don't really endorse Sneakers. I had him blocked for 8 months, probably until recently. Yeah. It just catches people off guard. Or I'll speak for myself. It caught me off guard. So my knee-jerk reaction is to be like, well, fuck this guy. And then, I end up trying to defend someone I don't even fully agree with. And I do think, okay, yes, I'm an internet troll. I've been in the game for a while. Trolls have a right to troll. They're going to do what they do. It's hard to kind of sit back and tell someone how to deal with a troll, but from my perspective as a troll, the thing you want most is attention. Do I think any threats of violence are legitimate? Obviously not. I think there's a context that's getting missed in this whole situation. Is it still a dickhead thing to say, like, oh, you're a dead man over and over, knowing that it makes the other person uncomfortable? Yes, but at the end of the day, we just have two parties that don't really like each other, and they're picking apart what each other are doing and amplifying it, escalating it, just to try to prove that they're right. And it's never going to get anywhere. Luckily, I think it's close to dying. I don't think, no pun intended, close to dying. I don't think they're underneath it all. I don't think there's too much hard feelings. I think we'll move past this soon.
I hope so, man, because I'll tell you, like, this triggers me in a number of different ways. Like, this is, and I want to be sensitive to a lot of people's feelings, because I know, again, there's a lot of people online that are struggling right now. This is, again, coming to the end of the third week. We're approaching the fourth week. And during that time period, Carano has been very active on Twitter, even on that Monday when Kirk went away, of going after fans of the show, even going as far as tagging Kirk in those tweets, as Kirk is announcing that he's having suicidal thoughts and he's going away, which I initially had a problem with Carano on that. Spoke to him about that. He unfollowed me. Not the worst thing in the world. I like disagreement and having conversation, and if we can have conversation, great. But I also realize that I don't come across great in those conversations. We joke about it that I'm condescending. I know that I can come off that way when I just want to have a conversation about things and just ask questions and, poke a little bit, just see what people are thinking. So when I get unfollowed, that doesn't hurt my feelings, doesn't bother me. When I'm hanging out at a beach, having some adult beverages on a Monday, and I'm without my phone, and I don't know how many people went through this, but you're off of social media, and when you pop back on, you're blocked from somebody without any reason given to you. It's a really odd thing to do, especially when you're a showrunner. Like, he is a producer for the show now. That's how that goes. Like, he is Steve's fill-in producer. He is a part of the Kirk Minihane show. That's just how that goes. And he considers himself a protector of Kirk Minihane. Okay. He's Kevin Costner to Whitney Houston. That's fine. I'll make that joke about that. That's a funny joke.
Don't get it, but sure.
Excuse me?
I don't get the reference, but sure.
I'll
give you the benefit of the doubt.
You're a youngster. So I that stuff bothers me, and there's doxing involved in this, and I've been doxed by Minifans, so that stuff bothers me. Even on that Monday, before I got blocked by Carano, that Monday morning, I was blocked by the Quantum Week show handle for no reason at all. So there's always, just because of somebody that I follow or associate with, which to me doesn't matter. Again, this goes back to things that were talked about before, but when DEC had an issue with people who were following Zonker, and why would you follow them? And then so I had to show him, well, you're following Bob Murchison on Twitter, so what the hell are you talking about? Look at the hypocrisy there. Whether you're following somebody, not following somebody, I just wish people would stop telling other people how to act online, and then also just handle their business online accordingly. And if things are really bad for you, if you're really struggling right now, just take a break and put your phone down. That's totally fine. There's no judgment there. But it just seems like there's a lot of posturing and, blocking, and then also taking screenshots of that and then still commenting about that person while they can't comment on it. So to me, there's just a lot of cowardice in that, where these people, you can have a conversation about Phil from the Discord and continue to do that, but you've blocked him the entire time. Like, let him talk to him about that. Maybe sort this thing out. Have the conversation. But I don't understand the blocking of it. To me, it bothers me that this is going on, and it's still going on. And approaching the fourth week, it'll probably continue to go on until Kirk comes back, which is really weird that you have to wait for Kirk Minihane to come back to tell you how to act online as an adult. You can't be 40 years old and wake up all of a sudden somebody's being mean to you on the internet.
To step in, Red. So
please.
I don't know if I agree or disagree with that, if everything you said. I wasn't.
I think you agree and disagree. That's
glazed over a little bit. But
please,
if you're getting upset because other people are getting upset, you can also opt out, unfollow, mute certain word. You can mute the word doxing if you don't want to see it. So you have that option as well. But I do understand the point that any division in the quote unquote miniverse is not is not a good thing. It's a negative thing. Sneakers he's a troll, like Dave.
Absolutely.
Like Dave
This
said,
is not a
but he goes,
support.
yeah. So I just want to like, we do not support like the extents that he's taken. He is a dickhead, like VD said. I'm fine saying that. And I like Matt. He's been nice to me. I like him on the show. I personally would not have I wouldn't have handled it the way he would have, or that he has, but I also haven't been like on the receiving end of jokes and harassment for months on end. So I don't know how I would react if I were in that. That's kind of why I stay out of things and go down the middle and backtrack, because I don't like the confrontation. And I also like, I don't try to be confrontational, because I still have that fear in the back of my head that I'm going to be doxxed someday, because anything can be taken out of context. I have nothing to hide. I don't say anything too inflammatory, but there's always that chance. So, but Sneakers, he doesn't really leave room for the taken out of context excuse. Like he's in your face, he's saying terrible things, but at the same time,
he's going to bust your balls, and he's just waiting for you to bust him back.
Right. And at the same time, like that's not an excuse to dox someone or to share. Like, we're not talking like, oh, this is his profession. We're talking like tweeting out his address, and tweeting at his wife saying like, these are, I don't know. So it's that I definitely disavow. But I also, there's no proof of who's doing it. So it's just a whole mess. I think we are more somber in this discussion than we were when we were talking about Kirk's suicide attempt, which is an issue. Like every interaction I have on Twitter, I try to be lighthearted. I try to at least make myself laugh in it, even if I'm not making other people laugh. Like I try to just joke around. And with this whole situation, I honestly felt like I couldn't tweet anything or it would be taken the wrong way by someone. And that's just not like a good, we follow a comedy podcast. So I'd like to keep it lighthearted. And the last couple of weeks, for reasons outside of Kirk's mental health leave, have not been a very fun time on Twitter.
No, and I think the three of us, I think probably why I like you guys is because we're of similar mindset in that this is a comedy show and we like to do funny on Twitter. That's what we're trying to do. So even though VD, you call yourself a troll, I'd say the trolling that you do is fucking hilarious. I think with the trolling that you guys both do to Menners is funny. Now, whether he takes that, personally or doesn't see the joke in it, to me, that's on him. I think what you guys are trying to do is all based in humor, which is exactly what the show is trying to do. It's all based in funny. So but that's outside of what all the rest, this is what turned into now. This is all just doxing and threatening each other all the time now. And
one thing I hear get tossed around is like the old we're just busting balls kind of excuse, which is true to a certain extent, but you also have to admit, like, if you don't like someone or they don't like you and you're busting their balls, it's going to be received differently than if Ziggy is just stepping all over one of Red's jokes. Like you have to understand that. So to fall back on everything's a joke, whatever, it's kind of the blind Mike route where he took shots at Tommy Smokes, and then, the instant he's in front of him, he's like, oh, it's just a joke. But it's like, but you actually don't like him. So it's important to keep that in mind, at least for me. I think we're almost past all this shit. It'll probably flare up and linger on, but it's good to get all the facts out there, or at least the facts as we know them to be. And there is still positivity in the Miniverse right now. I've been waking up at 3 a.m. as best I can, catching on
that West Coast time.
Yeah, catching Cullinane as much as I can. It's just these little things that kind of pop up in the Miniverse are what make me love it, where it's like out of nowhere, kind of just a common joke can get latched onto, the joke being, in this sense, the propping up of Dave Cullinane. And out of it comes just great content and just something everyone can get on, and it's fun. And I don't know. That's why I love this universe for me. Things like that.
Absolutely. I don't come here to pick on anybody else. I just want to celebrate Dave Cullinane for this week, giving us Cully Side Up, as we like to call it. He still hasn't decided on the name of it. But if people can wake up early in the morning and hang out with Dave Cullinane as he is taking song requests, but not really taking song requests, weighing in on the Bruins and Miley Cyrus today and everything else, like, he's bringing some humor to the day where we haven't had a lot of things to joke about and engaging with Minifans. He's given us something. So I come here just praising King Cully up and down, man. He's fantastic this week.
I swear the hater. So let's get.
I'm not okay. I'm not a hater. I was as big a Cullinane guy as you could be during his 3-week stint as producer because I did not want Steve back.
Yes,
and I do love Cully because he's kind of like a little puppy running around trying to lick things and just a happy guy. I will say, and I swear this is a compliment. It is Cullinane's Periscopes are the only KMS related show, including like YouTube shows, where I can work, totally focus on my work and just have it in the background and not even think about it because it's so meaningless.
Yeah.
But I love him. I'm just saying it's meaningless, but it's great because it's something to laugh about and he doesn't take it seriously. So because we shouldn't be taking too many things seriously.
No. In the words of the great Dave Cullinane, it's fucking Twitter. You can't take it so seriously.
Yes. Preach.
Print
Cully,
the shirt.
preach. Yeah, print those motherfucking shirts. Like
yep.
the fact that he's just sitting there and he'll give you 15 minutes, 30 minutes of just bullshitting and just going back and forth. Like he's not taking anything seriously, which is exactly what we need to be doing. He's got merch out there. Like he's a parody of a morning show that's taking it seriously but not taking it seriously. Like he's got everything all wrapped in there, man. He's an evil genius. I think it's brilliant what he's doing.
Red, I know you're a P1 D1 for the Jerry Callahan podcast. Has Jerry addressed the Periscopes? Like I would assume he wouldn't be very happy with Cullinane doing.
No, I'll say this: the only time he addresses it when it's a nighttime Periscope when Cullinane's been drinking, he'll address it there. He doesn't touch any of this stuff.
Interesting. Do you think he knows about it?
I gotta think he knows about it.
I don't know. I think Cullinane tweets so much that it's like it's not on his profile on his page very long, and I don't.
He's muted.
Jerry, yeah. He's very. Also, I will say I don't think Jerry fans appreciate a Cullinane enough as much as they should. He gets a lot of shit for his audio. He's the second best in the biz, Cullinane.
Dude, he's dealing with boomer after boomer on that show, and they're never in one place at any time. Like they've been on remote more so they've been in one place, and when they're actually in one place, it's a bar restaurant place that's not even a studio. So there is no way that anybody can truthfully make fun of Cullinane for his sound. Now you can troll him for it because it gets him going and he loves it, but there's no truth in that. If those guys are giving him a hard time, they're a bunch of like Turtle Boy might. I don't know. I have no idea. But if Turtle Boy would just sack up and drive into town and do it, be a tough guy about it. Let's go.
I forget.
I think they record near a school, so he's legally not
allowed.
Shit. Allegedly.
Wow. I saw someone on Twitter, I forget who it was, but they were like, oh yeah, Jerry, he's on his show talking about how coronavirus isn't real. Meanwhile, he's been hiding out in his Maine vacation for like 3 months. I think it might have been Matt from Providence.
With a terrible dye job, by the way. A terrible dye job that he has. It's Colin Cowherd-esque brown now, that whatever he has going on there. Yeah, completely hiding in Maine this entire time, yet shouting that it's peak madness that anything's going on in Massachusetts, which he's not even there. So, I hate listening to shit out of that show. Cullinane's the best part of it. I love it. What was that?
I said, sure.
I feel bad for Cullinane. Well, actually, I've gotten some insight on it. I used to think I feel terrible for him for having to sit through that show every day, but I've since learned that he doesn't actually listen to the show. Most of the time he's producing it. He's just kind of doing other shit, probably planning his Periscopes, working on merch designs. Yep. So, Cully's enjoying it. I'm happy for him. But yeah, I can't make it through that show. And it got mentioned at some point on the main show, but doing some kind of wife swap where Jerry can have Steve for a week and we get Cullinane for a week would be electric. And I don't think either one would go back to their original job.
No, they shouldn't. I would love for that to happen. To be rid of Steve, I would stop hate listening to Jerry's show if I could get Steve there. That would be fine.
Yeah.
That would be great. So, any final thoughts? I'm going to give Ziggy the last word. So, VD, any final thoughts on anything here?
I'll think of something and I'll step all over whatever Ziggy.
Perfect. Yeah, if he's got a joke coming, just step on it. Ziggy, go ahead.
Yeah, my final thought is there is no amount of money that I would not pay to have gotten Kirk's live reaction to the Dale Arnold binder clip on the back of the jacket video. Because that's chef's kiss, like perfect encapsulation of Dale Arnold. Just a shriveled, but not shriveled, bloated man.
How does that happen with him?
Has he acknowledged it at all on Twitter?
No one would know. No one would. Well, first, everyone's blocking Twitter, and no one will listen to him to know. But
he's got a Carano level of blocks going on right now. So I don't think we could ever see it, but that is what it is. That was my final joke.
That did just like make my day, and even just seeing like old like I don't know, there's just that legion of Boston radio people on Twitter. It was kind of a big win for the Minifans because I saw some random person, I think it was like Boston Radio Watch, they tweeted like, I miss Kirk at this moment because it's just such a layup for him.
I mean, if that image isn't on the mural, or if someone doesn't get a painter life of that image and send it to the studio, I mean, that should be next to Mike's Happy Thoughts jar. Should be that photo right there.
Oh, that's great. VD, anything else before we go, man?
No. Thank you for your service, Red.
Gentlemen, thank you. I think we just did a show. We'll be back hopefully next week. We'll see. I don't know. I never know what's going on in the Miniverse. Till then, Rundown.
Peace.
Take care of yourselves.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Father, how are you this afternoon?
I am very blessed. You really sound like you're from Boston. What's up?
Well, thank you. I am. A long time, probably many generations.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, Father, I'm sorry, a little nervous. I've never in my life called a radio show.
Well, I'm glad you did. What's up?
Very emotional for me.
Okay.
Well, my grandmother passed away recently.
Okay.
She was older, so it was not. Thank you. She was a blessed life. Believe it or not, she lived well into her hundreds.
Oh wow.
And as she used to say, she would only be about 7 years old. Nana Stella passed away recently.
Well, hold on. Who?
Nana Stella.
She's well into her hundreds. Okay, I got you.
As she used to say, she would only be about 7 years old. Nana Stella passed away recently, and my dad, Dave, she passed away in Nantucket. My dad, Dave, he works in New York. He brought me up in the faith and in the church, God bless him, but now he's wavered. And ever since my grandma passed away, my Grams really meant so much to him. I think he's going off the path. Like I said, he works in New York City. The day she passed away, he was so angry he tried to fire one of my cousins, Steve, works there. He tried to fire Steve for no good reason, blamed for something he didn't do. Just recently, we had a memorial to celebrate her life after 60 days. We had a very nice event at our house. We had, I'm sorry, it really upset me what happened, but he came over, we had Chinese food, and there were about 20 people there. He left a very big mess. He was disrespectful. He made face. He didn't clean up. It was just a really bad scene. And I don't think it's about him being a bad person. I think he's losing his faith. We have a cat, believe it or not, we call him Big Cat. That night the cat was injured. I don't know what happened to it. So anyway, my sister Ellie tried to get him into, to try to bring him back to the faith. My cousin, or my aunt Erica, my aunt, she tried to speak with him about treating us better, and maybe he needed to come back to Jesus and back to God. But he's just been ranting lately.
So, Father, how can you deal with it?